What's up, amigos? I'm bringing you another tournament report. Last weekend, I went to ARG Illinois States in Chicago, and Card Fighters Underground was hosting it. And this time, I was cut short from top 8. Only X1s or greater made it. I had X2, so I came up short. I was still playing Thavas, and it's the exact same build. So if you guys want more in-depth analysis of the deck profile, feel free to check my channel. I have it posted already, and check that out. So starting at round 1, I was versing Big Belly. It was a friend I knew. His name is Dustin. He is from Grapple Games, one of the locals I go to. This time, I lost pretty badly. Yeah, I got O2'd. So, game 1, things were going smoothly in the early game. He went first, so I was like, okay, I'm going to win the first stride just by running up to grade 3 in stride, no problem. However, when he rode to grade 3 and I was at grade 2, he double crits me while I'm at 3. So that instantly put me from 3 to 6, and I just lost that game. Pretty shitty luck. Game 2, I was hoping to come back and also come back with game 3, but things were not going as smoothly as planned. What I mean by that is by the time I got to my turn to ride to grade 3 in stride, I did not see any grade 3s at all. And I'm talking about my hand, damage zone, you name it. So I tried G assisting, and I had a decent hand to work off, knowing that I was going to lose 2 cards from G assisting, and I would have to pay 2 cards for the cost of stride because I didn't have a stride fodder, and still make a decent stride and generate back hand advantage, so I would survive his first stride turn following. But I missed the G assist. that I failed it, and so after a couple of turns, because he kept pushing me with him calling in regards to the front row, we're talking about like grade 3s, 11k beat 6 against my grade 2 Vanguard, and eventually I just fell behind because I was just so falling behind. So coming out of that round, it was kind of like shit luck and a bad way to start the day. But I told him good luck, and maybe we can both squeeze into top 8. So I told him, like, you keep winning, and I'll keep winning the rest of my rounds, so that way I can give you a better tiebreaker, and hopefully both of us will get in, or at least you. So with this outcome, I pretty much had to win the rest of the rounds if I really wanted to make it a top 8. So, round 2 versus Vanquisher. I faced an old friend named Wiley Cheers. He's a really good Vanquisher player, and I faced him since last year. And this round, I too owed him. So, game 1, he had a G assist for grade 3. Unfortunately, he had to grab the Sigma, which sucks because you'd rather get the Sparking. And luckily, throughout the turns, he had the right shield value cards to stay in the game. And what I mean by that is that he had his heal triggers, he had his PGs right when he actually needed them. And he was playing it smart too by denying me CB. And it provoked me into my second stride going into Lambros because I only had like maybe one counterblast to work with. And I think I had an Adelaide. And I was like, if I really want to get the use of Adelaide, I might as well go into a Lambros. And then also see if I can use Gophelia's countercharge to get a Cipla off so I can get a draw on top of that. So that's what I did. Lambros still pushed him a bit. And eventually I got through his hand on the second of third Alexandro's turn. And it got to the point where he almost stacked out. He, like I said, he was playing it smart. He was guarding where he needed to. He was attacking my rears and slowly controlling my CB count. And he had some cards that also would give him some advantage, so he would commit to a board and still get a card back somehow. There's a grade 1 you can like Soul Blast 1 or 2 and draw. I think it's a Thunderstrike unit. And then there's another grade 2 plays Thunderstrike something, draw a card essentially. So he was playing conservatively and playing it smart. So definitely still a good game. Game 2, it's very similar. This time he did hit a few draws early. And so when he got to the turn to ride to grade 3, he did had a G assist again once more. But this time he got the Sparking. And so the 2 draws from early kind of canceled out the -2 from the G assisting. and he was still playing it like he was behind, and he denied me CB quite a bit still. So it provoked me again to go into a Lambros turn on my second stride. And eventually, we got to a point where he was dry tracking his heel, so his deck was putting in work for him. And I came into a predicament where I think he was at 2 or 3 damage, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to go into Wailing. He has like 4 or 5 cards on the field, and I know he's just going to take some of these attacks if I go into Alexandros, and I really need to get rid of that board because it's still somewhat of a threat, you know? Especially when he does like a voltage or something like that that gives the front row power up. And with that in mind, I go into a Wailing Thavas and actually get to retire about 4 rear guards. One of them he intercepted. The other thing that influenced that is that I didn't have another unit with resist inherently like Cipla or Melania in hand. I had double title, and so I could only give one of them resist, and one of my boosters was an Orphea. So I did have the full column on the left side resist, but the other title was by himself. And as soon as that one attack, he pretty much killed it with MP Dragon, and that got me 1 attack. Then the left column gave me 2 more attacks and Wailing attack for the 4th battle to retire 3 regards. And he used one of them to intercept and like double G guard, I think, to stop the Wailing Thavas. So after that, I eventually broke through again with an Alexandros, and yeah, took it there. Like I said, Wiley's a good Vanquisher player overall. I think he's the best to date that I've ever faced in terms of Vanquisher. This time I won with Thavas. Last year we faced Blue Wave versus Vanquisher, and he got me in Game 3. And at least in Game 2 for this matchup, he was in a better state than the first one, instead of, you know, having to ride a Sigma. That's pretty rough. Going into round 3, I was facing Overlord. I met a viewer. His name is Karan. I 2-0'd him. And Game 1, I got the first strike turn, and I was using Saberflow and Cipla to give me the advantage, basically. And like I said, with the Overlord matchup, I don't tend to commit too much on the board until I'm ready to go for the kill, usually. And he G-guarded that turn. So on his following turn, he went into Ziegenberg and flip. So that way he can get the restand, and he nuked whatever was left of my board and got the free restand, essentially. And we both grinded for a few turns. I think he was really surprised that Thavas was able to grind with Overlord. And like I mentioned, with thanks to like Cyberflow and the massive amounts of draw triggers and Bubble Edge, I can accumulate hands from like 10 to 15 cards in hand pretty easily. So being able to have that big enough hand to stop Ziegenberg, Purge, and Ace and so on helps a lot. And eventually you're going to break through the defenses because Alexandros just is a great stride as time progresses too. Game 2, I stayed at grade 1 to get the first stride because he made me go first. He also G-guarded me when I went in my first stride, so he fuss again went into Ziegenberg. And throughout my turns, even in the early game, I noticed that my grade 3 Thavasas were going into the damage zone. I'm talking about I had 3 Thavas in the damage zone, 1 in my Vanguard, and I think I discarded 1 for the cost of stride on first stride. So I didn't have any grade 3s. You know, I only had a few left in the deck or in my hand because he would think that this might be the time to Drachma. And it did come down to a turn where he was debating to Drachma me. And the thing that made him not go into Drachma is because I drew, I think, about 4 to 6 new cards that he didn't know what they were, thanks to cards like Saberflow and Cipla and stuff like that. And I think I even hit a draw trigger on top of that. So he didn't want to risk it because my hand size was probably around 12, 13 cards, I think, on top of that. So he decided to go into the Purge, and to be honest, if he did Drachma, I wouldn't be on a grade 3. I didn't have a grade 3 in hand. I would have been stuck at a grade 2. I had 2 heals on a PG, so that would instantly shut my G-guarding possibilities. And I might just lose that turn. Or just take so much, and then I don't know if I could even come back the next turn. I didn't have an exact copy of a grade 2 either, so I couldn't even Megiddo on grade 2 if I wanted to. So yeah, thank God he wanted to Purge. And so the next turn, I had a good feeling that he might have 1 to 2 PGs because I already saw him use up 2. And I was just hoping that he didn't have enough other shield value like 10Ks and a heal trigger. And I think I barely broke through. And he did have double PG. And I committed a board because of Adelaide and Orphea and abusing that power up for the Alexandros boost. And luckily I was able to push through. So that's how I win that one. And Karan's a really cool guy. We talked a bit throughout. We talked about our games, and he was surprised about the grinding that Thavas could keep up with Overlord in a sense. And I told him about the Drachma, the debate he had. He's like, yeah, I was really tempted to go into Drachma, but I really didn't want to risk it and just lose to that. And I'm like, that's understandable, especially since it's the second game. You already lost the first one, and if you do it on the second game and lose, that's all your chances gone out the window because ZRs do that, you know. He also was telling me that him and his friend Chanel are going to Team Link. Chanel is somebody that got second place at a BCS in Indy in the spring of 2017. He played years in that event, and I actually, funny enough, faced him in that event, and I lost to him due to not being able to stride when my stride turned for Night Rose in that time. But yeah. So I recognized him, and I was like, hey, shout out to him. And he remembered me. And he was pretty excited throughout the day. He's like, oh, he's playing Thavas too. I'm like, yeah, because he was playing Thavas too. So, Thavas players. And going into round 4, I was versing the leaders. I was facing against the store owner, Dirk. He's also a good friend. This time he gets it, and I go 1-2, essentially. So, game 1, I went first. And he didn't have the bunkers when he rode to grade 3 later on. So we got into the stride turns, and I was able to generate a big hand to withstand some of those delete turns, basically, and still apply some pressure against them. And eventually I seal it on the second Alexandros. Game 2 was a different story, though. Game 2, he went first. And he won on his grade 3 right turn. He had the given, the grade 2. And I went from 2 to 6 damage that quick. It was brutal. Game 3, I went first, and when I rolled a grade 3, he was at 1 damage, and I think I was at 1 damage. And the problem here, I think, was my misplay. I called the Petros, and I had a 7k booster, and I poked with the Petros column, put him in 2nd damage, and then Thavas attack in that 16k, and I draw a card. And he took it, so he's at 3 damage. And I think that was my mistake, was giving him the 3rd damage. So he contemplated about striding into that turn at all, and he's like, I'm not going to stride. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I think I got a heal trigger in the drive check, and so I went to 0 damage on top of that. And I drove check a grade 3, but the grade 3 is useless against guarding. And I didn't even have a PG to help with that. And he did the Colony Maker clone, in a sense, where you can grab any deleter from your deck, and then he grabbed the given, and that thing was 2 counterblast, so he still had 1 left, and the 1 was saved for the given. And I did not hit any triggers on my damage checks. I literally went from 0 to 6 that turn. It was like, whoa. I was like, well, that's, I was like, I feel like I'm not going to make it to top 8 at this point. But, no, he played it well. Dirk is a cool guy, and he definitely knew what he was doing with the leaders, especially that came down to it where, like, I'm not going to stride. I'm just going to be in grade 3 and do this shenanigans. And it really paid off for him. He actually made it to top 8 as well, so congrats to him. Round 5, I faced Asha. I went 2-0, and it was against my friend Andy. He is also from Grapple Games. In game 1, in the early game, I think I hit 1 to 2 draw triggers and ended up with 4 grade 2s when my grade 2 turn came up. So then I was feeling a little easy just calling a title just because I can apply some early pressure and still have enough grade 2s to go bunkers on my first stride. We're talking about like Saberflow and Ciplo and Adelaide. And then he stayed at grade 2 for an extra turn, and he denied me some CB and attack for the title, essentially. And so I thought we were playing the grade 2 game for a bit, but it turns out the next turn he showed that he was grade stuck, and he had a G assist, and he got the Seer and Heart, grade 3. So with losing resources due to the early game because of title and G assisting, he was struggling starting at first stride too on top of that, and I think I take it on the second strat at Alexandros because I was just pushing still. And going into game 2, I stayed at grade 1 because he made me go first for an extra turn, so then that way I can get the first stride. In the early game, I did hit 1 draw trigger, and again, I ended up with 4 grade 2s on my grade 2 turn when it came up. So then I called the title because of it and applied the same early game pressure. He stayed at grade 2 again, and I went for the title again with his regards. My grade 3 turn came up, and I top decked the title assault, another one. And I only played 3 of these guys. And I just, fuck it, I call it, because now I have twin drive. More chance of triggers to stack on title, essentially. And I think I did hit a trigger, so that made it better for me, in a sense, to do that play. And then he Jesused it again, and this time he got blue Asha. That helped a bit, but he was still struggling in his stride turns, and I just take it on the second Alexandro's turn. Andy was saying that throughout the whole day he was just having great suck issues, and I'm like, that's some horrible luck in general. So it sucks. I hope next time we get to play against each other and shit luck doesn't happen to us. And turns out that they didn't do a round 6. They announced that they were cutting the round 6 off. It was pretty late already, I noticed. It was like 8 o'clock at night, too. And to be honest, at that point, I kind of wanted to go home, too, on top of that. So I really wasn't picky about it. But then they announced top 8, and I noticed that the X1s and greater got in. So if there was a round 6 and I would have won that, I might have had a chance to get into top 8, but who knows. It all comes to tiebreakers as well, too. And ARG counts draws, so you also have to go against the people that drew, which can suck sometimes. But who knows, right? Can't win them all. My only complaint was me breaking in round 1 on the second game. Like, I've never bricked so hard in fucking Thavas. Like, holy crap, no grade 3s ever. Damage zone, GS's phase, like, you name it, all that stuff. No grade 3s in sight. Oh, 7 grade 3s were in deck. And it's just, I can't do shit, because Thavas is a generation break deck. You know, that's the hard truth, really. I got one more future event coming up soon. In fact, it's this weekend from the time I'm recording this. It is the Bushiroad Team Lake event in Chicago. And Miguel, Eduardo, and I are going to be a team. That's the plan. We're going to try to do our best as a team to top to, you know, get some Chrono Jets for Miguel. Because he still wants to play Gears. So, wish us luck, amigos, and please like the video, comment down below, share, and subscribe. See you guys.